Today we're taking a leap into Super Mario Odyssey to celebrate 35 years of Mario Jumpman Mario. Even if his story hasn't changed much from the classics with Bowser kidnapping Princess Peach in his airship, this game took 3D platforming to new heights. With Cappy at our side, let's take a look at the cuisine offered up by this game in Luncheon Kingdom. When we arrive, this kingdom is terrorized by a giant cockatoo who wants to keep the kingdom's stupendous stew all for itself. With a hop, jump, and a cap throw, we can make it to the top of Meat Plateau, where a giant slab of salt-crusted steak is waiting to be added to the stew. Mario can capture this meat before getting dropped into a giant pot of bubbling stew. Now to me, this stupendous stew looks like a Japanese cream stew, with a thick white broth and lots of vegetables. Some of the ingredients seen around the kingdom include peppers, carrots, corn on the cob, and of course the salt-crusted meat. Let's take these and see if we can make a stew that will be simply stupendous. Let's start with the meat, so go ahead and capture yourself some steaks that are good for roasting. I'm using two 18-ounce New York strip steaks. Make sure to let the steak rest outside of the fridge for about half an hour to bring it up to room temperature before drizzling with oil and freshly ground pepper. Wait, why can't I see the pepper on camera? Oh right, don't forget to fill your pepper mill before use. And there's that pepper that we're looking for. Now to the salt crust that is starting with 6 egg whites cracked into a bowl and whisked together until frothy. These egg whites will make the packed salt bake into a hard crust, but can be replaced with 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of water. Then we'll prepare our favorite herbs to flavor the steak. I'm going with 2 dry bay leaves, 3 to 4 sprigs of rosemary, 3 stems of fresh sage, 4 to 5 sprigs of fresh oregano, and 3 cloves of roughly chopped garlic. Then the last thing we need is a whole bunch of salt. I've got about 3 cups of kosher salt here. I'm adding about 1/2 a cup into a food processor, followed by each of the herbs that we just prepped. Then pulsing the ingredients together for 30 seconds until all of the herbs are finely chopped and well distributed, before dumping into a large bowl, followed by our whisked egg whites. Start bringing everything together with a rubber spatula while adding the remaining salt a little at a time. When ready, this mixture should have the consistency of wet sand, so add extra salt or drizzle in some water until the right texture is found. Now we'll place our steaks in a cast iron pan before covering with the salt mixture. Make sure to preheat the cast iron with your oven as hot as you can before it's too warm to handle. Pack the salt mixture tightly on top and around the sides of the steaks, making sure that no surface has holes before placing everything in a 475 degree Fahrenheit or 250 degrees Celsius oven for about 15 minutes. Pull the steaks out of the oven when they register about 5 degrees cooler than your desired doneness. For medium rare, I'm aiming for about 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Then leave the steaks to rest for 7 to 8 minutes before cracking the salt crust. Then bring them out of the pan and cut into your perfectly done and perfectly seasoned steaks. For use in this stew, I'm leaving these steaks as is, but if you want to serve them on their own, I would suggest removing the salt crust and frying in a hot pan with some butter to form a nice brown crust. Let's get started on our stew base, which is essentially a bechamel sauce. Start making a roux by melting 4 tablespoons of butter over low heat. Once fully liquid, add in an equal amount of all-purpose flour and whisk constantly over medium-low heat. The roux is ready when the uncooked flour smell goes away and the mixture starts to lightly bubble. Now to turn this into a bechamel, we'll start pouring in 2 cups of heated whole milk, a little bit at a time. Whisk this constantly over low heat, adding a few tablespoons of milk. The mixture will thicken significantly and then start to thin out. Once it starts thinning, you can add the rest of the milk. Simmer over low heat for about 10 minutes, stirring constantly until creamy and thick. At this point, you can optionally add in a 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg to push your flavors through the roof. On to our last stew ingredients. I'll be using an ear of corn, 1 zucchini, 2 to 3 carrots, a green bell pepper, and 1 head of broccoli. Prep all of your veggies before drizzling with olive oil and grating in some salt and pepper. Then these are going into a 350 degree Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius oven for 20 minutes, flipping them once halfway through. Then we'll grab 3 russet potatoes. These are going to form part of the stew base, so we will peel them completely and chop them into even cubes. You're aiming for small bite-sized pieces around 1/2 to 3/4 inch cubes. Chopping them evenly will allow all of these potato chunks to cook equally. Put them in cold water, bring to a boil, and cook until they are fork soft. Next up, sweat a finely chopped sweet onion in oil over medium heat until it turns translucent, about 3 to 4 minutes. Add in 2 crushed cloves of garlic, and cook for an additional 30 seconds. Now, pour in the bechamel we made earlier and stir everything until evenly incorporated. Then add 2 to 3 cups of heated stock. I'm using vegetable stock to keep my stew base vegetarian, but typically I would suggest using a stock that matches the protein, in this case a beef stock to complement the salted steaks. Then add in the drained potatoes, and our base is complete. This is the time when you want to add salt and pepper to the base, making sure to taste for perfect seasoning. Now, for a more traditional cream stew, you can add vegetables and steak and stir everything together, but I'm aiming for a 10 out of 10 on my presentation by matching the stew that Mario was dropped into. I'm going to ladle my soup into a cooking skillet before adding some potato mountains, some floating green pepper slices, carrot stepping stones, our crusted steak, and topping off with a triple power moon. To properly plate up our stew, let's start with a bowl filled with the stew base and add in a few thin slices of the salt-crusted steak, some thinly sliced carrots, halved slices of zucchini, roasted broccoli and peppers, and some kernels of corn. Now before taking my first bite, let me know if you liked this video by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel to help me out in making more video game dishes. Now this turned out really nice. The stew base is creamy and flavorful, with each of the toppings bringing something entirely different to the table. The salt-crusted steak is my favorite part because I can really taste the individual herbs it was crusted with, and the remaining chunks of salt add little explosions of flavor to each spoonful. Let me know in the comments below if you've tried this recipe out at home. Don't forget that I'm live streaming new games on Twitch all the time to find new recipes, so click the link below and swing by my channel. I also post hints to new videos and other cooking adventures on my Instagram and Twitter. I'll see you next week for a look into one of my family's favorite recipes.